Hey Partha, so to start off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself as well as your company Lasso?
Yeah, sure. So I run a company called Lasso. The whole idea of Lasso is that we improve movement. At the core, we make compression apparel that helps to stabilize and support joints and works in a similar manner to how medical tape or kinesio tape would work. It reinforces key ligaments and tendons. So that helps not only stabilize a joint, but it helps improve how your body is moving. There's use cases on the performance side as well as recovery, and so that's what I do. And me personally, I'm super, super obsessed with sports, fitness, that whole world. And just since I was a kid, always just trying to find ways to get my body or to help people get their bodies to perform better. So that's a big passion of mine.
And can you walk me through that background story a little bit? Like, how did you first come up with the original business idea?
Yeah, totally. So I started Lasso after I broke my ankle playing basketball. So I was playing, just rec, broke my ankle, went through the rehab process. Something clicked in my head when I was restabilizing my ankle and getting to the end of rehab. I had set the goal for myself. I wanted to dunk a basketball, and I'd never done that before. I could barely touch the backboard. And so I went through all this research, learned how my body works, strengthened everything, got up there. And once I did it, I realized, well, the majority of the stabilization that I added to my ankle was these very, very tiny ligaments, right? So I added, in essence, a very small amount of muscle to create a major impact to how my body moved. And so as I went through that process, started to identify there were ways that we could, through, especially through compression apparel, use it in a smarter way than the industry was doing to actually improve how we move. And so that's how we started Lasso. Was really from that philosophy, rather than just laying compression across the whole apparel, to put it in the right places where it actually provides some material benefits to how the body works.
Hmm. And is there a meaning behind that name, like Lasso?
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple actually. So the core of it is we feel that movement is a really large freedom for people, and I think anyone who's had an injury and then recovered from it will agree that that feeling when you can finally leave your house, run again for the first time, that's just pure freedom. And so Lasso really kind of inspired from that Wild West cowboy freedom type of energy. And at the same time, we also feel that the mechanism of the compression really helps pull in your joint, right? And so that's kind of how we think about it, is pulling in and stabilizing, how a lasso would.
Hmm. That's awesome. And so when you were in college, you were pre-med, I believe, and you're on track to becoming a doctor. So what was that turning point for you when you decided you wanted to start your own business instead?
Yeah. So for me, there was a point where I was just like, I don't think medicine is going to be for me. I'm not sure if I'm into the whole topics that I was studying. I was getting into chemistry, biochemistry. It just wasn't interesting. And then on the flip side, I didn't like any of the jobs that were available to me. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I saw in internships, and I just overall didn't feel like the corporate route was for me. I didn't feel like I'd make the impact I wanted to make. And so um, I just kind of set out to carve my own path. And what was exciting is I was fortunate enough to be able to raise money, and I actually didn't even complete college. I just went right into it. And was able to kind of get going and learn along the way. But I always say entrepreneurship, it was something I realized I wanted to do when I had to reconcile how can I make the most impact that I want to make in my life. There wasn't a path for it, right? So you have to build your own. And so that understanding of how you build your own path, it's really more, it's a craft or a trade. It's not a job, right? And so to learn a craft or a trade, you have to find a master and you have to be an apprentice. And so I spend as much time as possible with mentors and peers who I really look up to and looked up to learn. And that was a foundational piece of how I got started.
Hmm. And what would you say was the most challenging moment for you so far in starting your own business?
So I think every entrepreneur has to go through this, or at least a lot do. But many of us grow up with some sense of financial attachment where money actually like means something to us emotionally. And
Right.
so for me, it took having to go all the way broke to understand that even if I didn't have money, I was still able to be happy. And so I had to completely separate happiness from finances in my mind. Once I was able to do that, I started to be able to lead with my heart and with my values with the business and really talk about that and have faith that money would follow. And so that's really how we've proceeded with building the company. The brand is really leading with the message and the why, what we stand for, and we've seen that the capital follows that.
Hmm. And on the flip side, you've had a lot of success in running your business. You were named Forbes 30 under 30, and you've also met President Obama. So, what has been like the best or most satisfying moment for you so far?
Yeah, my goal since I started was I always have these role models, right? Whether they're big athletes or musicians or whatever. Um, I always had in my head, I just feel like I should be able to do business with those people. Um, I'm fascinated by what they talk about. I'm fascinated by where their brains are at. I want to be on a level that I'm creating value for everyone I look up to. And so for me, there was this point where I could sense that the way people were interacting with me was different. It wasn't like people stopped giving me advice and they started asking me for advice, and it was people I looked up to. And kind of when that happened, it happened sometime in the last year. I'm not sure exactly why, but something changed, and I started to feel on the same level as everyone I had looked up to. And for me, that was really satisfying because I mean, I gauge everything on personal growth. I'm not super into anything else, money or fame or any of that, right? So um,
Mhm.
that was the moment for me where I felt like, okay, that's my marker internally for me feeling successful. So now that I felt successful, it was very freeing because I didn't have to prove anything anymore to myself, importantly, um, to do anything. So that kind of pivot point gave me a lot of freedom personally to be able to lead.
And if you could go back in time to when you were first starting, what is one advice that you would go and tell yourself?
I think it's kind of that personal growth side of things. So decoupling from money, stop caring about the vanity metrics like employee counts and all these dollars raised. People really just make a big deal about those kinds of things. And now with maturity, when someone brags about how many employees they have, it just makes me think, man, that sucks. You have to pay out that much money every single week, every couple of weeks. And people talk about how much money they raise, and I'm like, okay, so how much of your company is left? And so there's really two sides to every coin. And if I were to talk to myself when I was starting, it would be a strong push to say, hey, don't worry about that stuff. Like, be inspiring, be who you are, right? Fill your role in society and talk about what you believe in, and the rest will figure itself out.
Mhm. And Partha, so one of the first thing I did when I first heard about you was, of course, like look you up on Google, and I found that you have a very clean personal website. You also have a large following on Instagram and LinkedIn. So I was wondering, what sorts of tips would you give to someone who's first trying to build up their online presence and start to build their own personal brand?
Yeah, totally. So I was intentional about it before. I'm not anymore, from the standpoint of actually growing it because I just kind of stopped caring as much. I think when you're trying to kind of get going, it's about cosigns. So basically, you're looking for other people to give you the stamp, like this person's a legit person to talk to, right? So that's like, I think Swish does a really good job of this,
Right.
from TrueFan, but it's basically collaborations with others, finding ways to do content or tell stories together. That's big. And then I think the other part of it is um, it's pretty easy to build a tribe if you go out and speak about what you believe in. I read this or heard this somewhere, and I can't remember where, but basically, you don't learn anything about somebody when they say yes, but you learn everything about somebody when they say no. And so when you disagree with something and you voice that and you voice why you disagree in a civil way, right? Not antagonistic, but just like, hey, I disagree for these reasons because it's what I believe. People know what you stand for, and that's really important in life, and especially in this world where it's hard to tell sometimes what people believe in. And so when we see values to really resonate with, we tend to follow people like that. And so when you're very clear and forthright about what you believe in and why, I think that's the best way to get started.
Mhm. And do you have any advice for someone like me who's still a student, but is interested in entrepreneurship and wants to potentially start a company in the future?
Yeah, I would say just learn. I mean, what you're doing right now, the internship with Stadia is the exact right thing to do. You know, it's at the end of the day, everything boils down to, are you putting yourself in situations where you're exposed to something you don't know, or learning from somebody whose perspective will help you build your own. And ultimately, you're going to have to define your own philosophies and views on the world. And you don't have to do that tomorrow. You have as long as you want to get there. A lot of people will take 20, 30 years before they're ready to do something, right? After college is what I'm speaking. So I think the most important thing is to start identifying who you are and what you believe in, and then observing how others who have similar beliefs manifest those into their businesses, how they boil that into how they lead, how they communicate, and how they inspire others. And that's the core, in my opinion, of what leadership is.
Got it. And I also want to ask, so under the current like COVID-19 pandemic, how are you and how's the Lasso team doing currently?
Yeah, we're doing, I mean, from like a communication standpoint, pretty good. We were already starting to think about, hey, we need some better systems in how we communicate. So we already had a game plan to be changing kind of how we're doing planning and everything internally. So that was opportune for us to be making those changes because it more highlighted those needs that we knew were there. Business wise, we had a couple shifts that we saw demographic wise in consumer purchasing behavior, but we were able to adapt to those pretty quickly, which was awesome. And I think what's exciting is that for us, we did this give back campaign called Move with Compassion. Our typical slogan is Move with Confidence, and so for every purchase we had, we donated a pair of socks to a healthcare worker on the front lines, and that was amazing for us just to see the whole society come together around our brand, and for us to be able to exhibit some leadership during a tough time. We felt that was really important and core to the business. So we were actually able to donate to over 200 hospitals in the U.S. So it very big campaign for us, and it was really awesome to see everybody come together, and even in the recap. Just to see our community of customers responding back to the email we sent, resonating with our values and our core why. That for us is really the silver lining through all of this, is when you see people come together to do good, that matters a lot.
That's awesome. Before we end, I also prepared 8 rapid fire questions.
Do it.
So try to answer them as quick as possible. So the first one, who's your favorite basketball player?
Dwayne Wade.
What's one thing that you can't live without?
Music.
What's something new that you learned in quarantine?
Cooking.
Who's your greatest source of inspiration?
Um, Probably my dad.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Focus on empathy.
Nike or Adidas?
Lasso.
If you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be?
Dinner.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Um, this one's really tough for me. Um, Probably Andrew Yang.
Okay. And the last one, White Sox or Black Sox?
From like colors in black.
Got it. Okay, that's it for today's interview. Thank you, Partha, for taking the time to do this. I really appreciate your advice, and I wish you and Lasso the best of luck and stay safe.
Thanks, Rick.